peace of mind and to stay alive. Don't be greedy. Let the last few cents go and live to trade another day.
Warning. The political trade features probabilities and perspectives about politicians, political parties, political outcomes, and political wagering. The political trade is rated NSFP, not safe for partisans.
The number one biggest game is with the kingdom of fame. It's like a race at the top because they want to be boss. They don't care who they step on as long as they get along. Politicians in my eyes.
Okay, welcome back to The Political Trade, the podcast for people with a passion for politics, probability, and profits. I'm Jeff Joseph, editorial director of Luckbox magazine, hosting the podcast where conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, partisans and wingnuts all come together to make money betting on politics by trading in the prediction markets at predictit.org, the stock market for politics that trades 24/7. Joining us on the show today for the first time is a legendary predicted super trader, perhaps known best for his always sell at 90 rule. We've talked about him a lot, so it's great to finally have none other than iSavage, Doug from Chicago, on the show. And up ahead, Doug will share one of his most effective trading tactics and his 3 favorite trades in the market today. So to get the most out of this podcast, you should open up predictit.org, click on the Markets tab, which is top left, follow along, and leave your political ideologies at the door. As always, I'm joined by Mike Reddy. Mike is the editor at Luckbox magazine, a new prediction market trader, and the producer of The Political Trade. Mike, how are you?
I've been doing well, Jeff, and I tell you, I've been tracking some of the recommended trades from our previous guests, and by tracking, I mean investing in those trades. And I have a few hat tips to share at the top of this episode. The first hat tip is going to go to Derek Phillips from episode 6 and Anthony Scaramucci from the previous episode, episode 7. Both of them said that it would be a good buy to get yes shares in the recession during Trump's first term market. Now, that price has been climbing since. It hit an all-time high on Sunday at 88 cents. Took its first major dip since then today, but it's still trading around 83 cents. It's still up.
I'm in that trade as well, so absolutely hat tip to Derek and Anthony.
And our second hat tip, also going to Derek Phillips for this one, from episode 5. That's when he introduced us to the 2020 Alabama Republican Senate primary market. And when he was on the show, he recommended we buy Jeff Sessions at 10 cents. Now, if you've been playing along at home, you'd know that Sessions is now trading in the ballpark of 30 cents. It's at 27 right now, down 2 cents for the day. But if you got in at 10 when Derek first recommended it, you just about tripled your money.
You know, I have mixed emotions about that trade because I liked it when I heard it, and it was trading at 10 cents. I put a price order in at 9 cents, God knows why, and watched it drift away, and now it's sitting at 30. And then, insult to injury, was having Anthony Scaramucci on our podcast last week. We ran that trade by him. He liked it as well. The trade got a second wind and is now tripled from 10 up to 30. So it's been fun to watch, but it would have been a lot more fun if I had a piece of it.
I'm sure.
With that in mind, we put our guests in the hot seat each time, and our format, we always ask our super traders to share a trading tactic with us and also to give us their 3 best trades. We're going to do the same with Doug today. Everyone talks about iSavage. He's well known, as you said, for the iSavage rule. And he's here with us today. So Doug's in Chicago. So Doug from Chicago, welcome to the show. How are you, Doug?
Greetings, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And with the context of the hat tips that Mike just acknowledged, is there a best trade in your history that you'd want to share with us?
Well, yeah. And actually, from you guys just bringing up the context of Alabama, that brings back the memories of really just some of my best time on Predicted, and ended up being one of my best trades was when the Alabama 2017 special election between Roy Moore and Doug Jones, and it really looked dead in the water. Who would have thought that a Democrat was going to win in Alabama in the era of Trump? And luck having it that I happened to be in the car where looking at my phone, and a small piece of news came across that was, Roy Moore might be embroiled in a sex scandal. And at that moment, I instantly bought into Doug Jones, yes, at probably 9 cents or 10 cents. And bought as much as I could under 15 cents and just watched it skyrocket to 30, teetered around. And obviously everybody knows the saga of Doug Jones pulling off that election. And it really turned into one of the best times on Predicted because it spawned multiple other elections, who would win the most counties, who would win specific counties, what would the margin of victory be. And it was just ended up being a really big payday and really just a fun time too, honestly.
Well, you've definitely had some fun on Predicted. You're currently ranked 31st among the oracles on Predicted's leaderboards with 236% ROI over the past year. You've been doing this for a while, trading politics since September 2016. You've had consistent five-figure profits after losing big on the Trump's election. What happened there in 2016? You acknowledged that was a period where you took a little bit of heat and then came back strong with consecutive winning years ever since. But tell us a little bit about 2016 and what you took away from that.
Well, anybody who's been around since that time, if you don't have a story about how you lost big on 2016, you happen to either be lucky or really just got to get out at the right time. But that's really what I would consider the origin of my trading strategy of always sell at 90, because Hillary was just up across the board. Everybody was counting their money before they left the table, as they say, and the night just went horribly for anybody who had thousands of dollars invested in Hillary winning. And she was obviously trading up between 90, 91, 92, 95 cents in states that she ended up losing, and the general election ended up losing. And it just obviously wasn't worth it for anybody who held Hillary above 90 cents. And that was a big trading lesson, is that once you've made your money, nothing is guaranteed.
Well, it's no surprise that we're going to get deep into your trading tactics, sell at 90. But prior to that, we wanted to catch up with you on the current market right now. For example, we noticed today that that Cuomo showed up on the presidential boards today. He showed up in the market, and he's off to a good start. For what it's worth, Andrew Cuomo showed up today or yesterday. He's traded up to 5-6 cents at one point. He's up to 3 cents today, which is 2 cents up on the day total. Of course, Donald Trump is sitting at 47 cents today, which is a comeback for him. Biden slipped a couple pennies down to 44, and Pence, God knows what Pence is doing in this position, but it's at 3 cents. And this is for who will win the 2020 U.S. presidential election. But Cuomo showing up, it's an interesting play. Do you think it has any legs at all?
I think the series of events that would have to happen for that to be a serious play would, obviously, it's not something that I'm betting on right now. Let me put it that way, because again, the series of events that would have to happen of a Biden collapse, of that being Cuomo being the person who rises to the top, what it would look like in a convention standpoint without him having been active in the primaries. I don't see obviously that outcome having much of a probability. At the same time, we've seen such volatility in markets like this. I probably wouldn't buy no on him at 95 cents, because you buy a lot at no at 95, and then all of a sudden he's sitting at 8 cents and 10 cents because one of the 25 dominoes that would have to falls, and people get a little wobbly. So it's not something that I'm in on right now. But it definitely does make a good negative risk play if somebody already had maxed on everybody else. They're getting a nice little bonus they didn't see coming out of the deal.
Well, as you were speaking, he ticked up from 3 cents to 4 cents. So there's definitely some volatility associated with him showing up as a new contract within that market. And if he does, and of course, the interest in Cuomo is a direct result of something we discussed with Anthony Scaramucci on last week's episode. He's been masterful in his daily press conferences out of New York in terms of statusing his citizens on the status of the virus and what the state of New York is doing about it. In fact, come to think of it, and Mike, you've got a clip you can share with us, but he even has swag if he chooses to get into the presidential campaign.
This is 75% alcohol. It also comes in a variety of sizes. It has a very nice floral bouquet. I detect the lilac, hydrangea, tulips. What does it smell like to you? tulips, yes. Floral bouquet, making it in the state of New York. Corecraft, actually, is making it for the state.
I understand that his price is upticking, but are we really at the point, Jeff, where holding good press conferences is enough to be considered a serious contender for the presidency?
You know, it's been more than that. Of course, this clip was the governor introducing a hand sanitizer that the state has actually manufactured and branded. But what Cuomo has done so well, and I've been watching his conferences on a daily basis over the last 4 or 5 days. He has been a masterful communicator. He's been a calming influence. He has spoken in a clear way about what the state is doing. He's been very honest and realistic about the threat it poses to the citizens of New York. And at a time when leadership is often challenged and critiqued on the basis of communication skills, he has mastered the art of communication. And there was something very, very calming about him. And you know, you might not be a fan of some of his policies, or perhaps you are, but there is no doubt that Cuomo has given the master class on how to communicate during a crisis, and that clearly is what the interest is. I wouldn't be surprised to see him show up on the vice presidential market as well as an entry, and I imagine that would tick up a little bit too. And quite frankly, that could be interesting. Which leads us to the vice president market. I know we speak about it a lot, but I'd really like to get some of your feedback here, Doug. We've been very interested in that market because right now that's where there's more uncertainty than any of the markets, right? There's 15 different names listed in the market right now. And of course, out in front is Kamala Harris. She is she's trading at about 30 cents right now. I think she's the clear front runner. And right behind her is Amy Klobuchar at around 27 cents right now. Stacey Abrams is a distant 12 cents. And then Elizabeth Warren comes in the fourth slot, and she's traded today as high as 12 cents, and she's trading right around 10 cents as we speak. And Elizabeth Warren's been an interesting name. I know it's a position that Mike and I both have right here at this level from 10 cents. We know that, well, maybe you can share that as well, Mike. We had Anthony Scaramucci on last episode. We asked him about the VP markets, and he actually had his own ranking. And we'll share with you what he shared with us in the last episode.
And if Elizabeth Warren accepts it, she will be his nominee. She will be his vice president. Because I think he's going to say to himself, and again, this is just my political calculation, the biggest risk of the Democrats is the progressive wing of the party defecting from Joe Biden. And he's not going to pick Bernie Sanders. And so the person he can pick closest to gravitating that wing to him is Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Scaramucci put Warren in the top slot, had Amy Klobuchar directly behind her, and then Kamala Harris in third.
That's right. And we wanted to get your take on that, Doug. First of all, I imagine you have a lot of no positions in this market, but are you long any names?
I actually am long on Kamala Harris right now because I was able to pick up a lot of shares for her in the teens. So I've actually got a yes position in Kamala Harris that I'm holding. And you know, one of the reasons behind that, I'm definitely somebody in the camp that I think that an African American running mate is the biggest value add to the ticket right now. And really, that's just because if you look at the states that Biden needs to win and the difference in turnout from 2012 to 2016, what you saw was people who voted 4 years ago who didn't come 4 years later. And if you look at a state like Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, when you see 200,000 fewer people voting 4 years later than they did in 2012, I feel like if Hillary had an African American running mate, I feel like if Joe Biden puts an African American candidate on the ticket today, of those 200,000 people who did not vote in 2012, you could probably find a difference of 15,000 people in Michigan, a difference of more than 25,000 people in Wisconsin. His margins of loss there that would come out. It makes a difference in my book.
What's your take on Warren as a candidate?
So I think that he sent some signals this week that didn't really sound good for Warren. He really mentioned a couple times about being somebody that he wanted to be ideologically aligned with, which I think kind of was a veiled, not so veiled reference to Warren. I think they're probably too far apart on some issues that, of him being in the, obviously the more moderate lane of the Democratic Party. So I don't necessarily see her as, she's not somebody who I've got yes on right now. I've got a lot of no on her at 87 cents, and I feel pretty good with it.
But at this level, what would you do with Kamala Harris, which is your front runner position?
So I feel okay with holding her at 30 cents because, the opposite of that is either no position or holding no. And I think that when the short list comes out, Kamala Harris is definitely going to be on it. And there's some people who are listed right now whose names might not be on it. And some of that value is going to go to her because, she is talked about in most circles as being as somebody who's on Joe Biden's list, who matches up with him. I think that there's, the connection with his son. They knew each other. I think that there's just a lot of things there that I think that the Kamala Harris brings to the table that will bubble up. And when the short list comes down to 4 or 5 people or 5 or 6 people, she'll probably bump up from 30 cents to 35 or 40. And I still see some upside to her right now.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to be the contrarian here. I just can't help but think that she rubbed him the wrong way at that one debate where she challenged him on the busing issue. And I think an old timer like Biden might hold that grudge and just not want to give her the slot. Trading political expediency for perhaps his own personal feelings. But there was a strong piece the Washington Monthly ran. Paul Glastris, who's the editor-in-chief of the Washington Monthly, made a pretty compelling case about a Biden-Warren ticket, although he did mention that if Warren were to become vice president, then Republican Governor Charlie Baker in Massachusetts would have to, or would likely replace her with a fellow Republican. So that's certainly one risk. And then, of course, Warren is a little bit far to the left, and choosing her might mean losing the chance to win over a large number of moderates and independents. So there certainly is some risk to Warren, and she's definitely not the front runner. So we hear you. Kamala Harris is still in front for a good reason, I think. No question.
And I think this other thing to mention, even with what you were just saying there, is I think that Amy Klobuchar is probably a little overpriced at this point too. I think that she really spiked up when she kind of flubbed and said join the ticket. She went from like the 90s to the low 70s in the no price, and she really never recovered since then. And I think that that's still kind of a lot of hype. And also, it's not a guarantee that a Democrat in Minnesota would win a special election. It's a better chance than somebody else might be, but it happened in Massachusetts. Back in 2009, that was correct. That was something that nobody saw coming, and they might not want to take that risk in a state that can go red for statewide elections sometimes.
Is there a long shot in the VP field that you find attractive?
They might not be on the list yet. If you really like Cuomo that much, he's on there for 2 cents right now. If you want to back the truck up, but I also think that there are some people who Biden might really feel comfortable with if their names bubble up to the top. We haven't heard any talk about Valerie Jarrett. There might be other people from the Obama administration. Susan Rice is on there. I'm not saying to they're long shots, but again, I don't think it's worth buying no on anybody like that at 97, 98 cents when, they might get some buzz about them.
I'm not good at multitasking, but I just took a flyer on Cuomo as we were speaking, so why not? I just got I didn't know that Cuomo showed up in the vice president market, so thanks for the heads up on that. I think it's one of the reasons that I need the service that you were talking about earlier, and I'd like you to speak a little bit more about it. We were speaking offline earlier about this PI Twets, so that's PITWETS. It's a Twitter handle, and tell us a little bit more about it, Doug.
Yeah, it's one of the best things that you can invest into. It's run by another super trader, Dave S., and he came up with a great program for Twitter that the main functionality of it is to be alerted when tweets happen from any of the market accounts, Real Donald Trump, Mike Pence, White House, POTUS, and the other ones as they were adding people here and there, AOC and Bernie Sanders. They get added to market. If you subscribe to PI Twits, you get alerted when they tweet. You get their count of the day, you get their pace, you get how many they have for the time of the market at that point. And if you're a serious tweet market player, you really should invest. And I think it's a nominal fee for a lifetime subscription, and it's something that gives you an edge. I was saying, and a lot of people know this, that if a lot of times you can actually get an alert from PI Twets quicker than the tweet shows up on notifications from the bigger accounts, Real Donald Trump especially. So if you're really on the edge of a market, if it's a difference between one tweet, which way it's going to go, it really is a valuable service, and it just helps keep you organized. So free plug there for my friend. He's a good guy, and it's a great service.
And of course, and while you're on Twitter, listeners should also follow you, Doug, at iSavage_PI. We'll ask you one last question before we move on to the tactics section, because I'm really looking forward to learning more about the sell at 90 rule and how you've implemented that. And of course, what exceptions there might be in applying this rule. But one last question. What about the Jeff Sessions Alabama market? Any thoughts on that? That we've seen a nice run there from 10 to 30 cents. Is that a market you're following?
I think I'm like you. I missed the boat on that one a little bit. Prices are probably pretty good right now, but it's something that I really like to follow. I think my heart stayed in Alabama after those markets, and I like to keep that. I really, I mean, even playing predicted, you really get connected with a lot of journalists. You really get, in terms of following them, you really start to get a feel for the political nuances by geography. So I'm always following Alabama markets, but at the same time, I don't know which side I'd buy at Jeff Sessions at 30 cents yes right now. So I think I'll just have to watch from afar and maybe put a nominal bet on it just to stay involved.
And it's still a Trump-loving state in a lot of ways. And in light of his endorsement of Tuberville, I think we all know what the ultimate outcome on this is going to be. I think it's more of a trading opportunity, but I hear you and agree with you. Well, again, each episode of The Political Trade, we ask our expert traders to share and explain a trading tactic that they rely upon for their returns. And we're going to come right back after a short break, and we're going to ask Doug to share the iSavage rule with us. Okay, we're back with The Political Trade and our special guest, Doug from Chicago, iSavage on Twitter and on Predictit. And Doug, you're going to take us to school today. There's a rule named after you, and we want to hear all about it. So the iSavage rule, always sell at 90. Tell us about it.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's one of my favorite things to both talk about and live by as close as possible. Obviously, there's in every trader's history a time when they had a sure thing, they held a sure thing, and winds changed quicker than they thought. And then all of a sudden they were staring at maybe 4-figure gains. And not only did they lose those gains, but they also lost their original bet because they held at a high price and were really holding out for that last 10 cents, 9 cents, 8 cents of gains on the shares they had. And it never feels good. We've all been there before. Trump in 2016 was not the only time that I've lost a large bet, holding on a little bit too long. And those are the ones that you always remember. So what that lesson has kind of taught me is that as something gets high enough, and if you see an exit ramp that you can still walk out with a lot of profits from, especially as it gets up to 88, 89, 90, above 90 cents is gold. I take that off ramp many, many times. There's 100 markets that everybody's got their stories where they wish they would have sold. For peace of mind and for to stay alive, don't be greedy. Let the last few cents go and live to trade another day.
Now, it's a good round number and it's a good round rule. You obviously live by it because it's in your Twitter bio to make friends
Yes.
and always sell at 90. But if you had your chance to rewrite that rule, would you make it 92, 93, 94?
I mean, sometimes it's 88. Sometimes it's a nice round number because it's I guess it just kind of sounds good when you're trolling people after it happens. You can always find me in a market that flips sometimes when I'm not even in it, and I just pop in and say, hey, always sell at 90 because it's just a reminder. So it's not, obviously there's an exception to every rule. You will definitely catch me holding beyond 90 in certain cases, and sometimes picking things up at 90 when things look really sure. It's just a good psychological cutoff to say you don't remember that last $80 you made or that last $200 you made holding past 90 as much as you remember that time that you lost, more than $1,000 when the money was in your pocket and you had an exit ramp and you didn't take it.
It's right out of Daniel Kahneman's book, right? That's absolutely true. We think about the losses more than the profits. And yet, what you mentioned is the fact that there's opportunity costs, particularly what's happened, I think, to every predicted trader, that it has to happen to them the hard way, is they get stuck in a market, like, waiting for a primary to close or waiting for a margin of victory uh, to close, and you're sitting there for several days and you have money tied up that could have been used in another market. So I like the fact that you qualify this by saying, yeah, statistically you might do better holding it all the way to a dollar, but there's opportunity costs that you can't calculate when you get stuck in a market that hasn't resolved.
Absolutely. There's opportunity cost because your money's tied up. There's the times when, look at the recent remaining primaries where Biden was trading 94 and 95 cents. Yes, in places like Kentucky and Indiana and, almost every other market. And, for the main market, he was 88, 89. And, again, I absolutely sold him, yes, in Kentucky at 95 cents and then was able to buy back in the low 80s. So you also, lose out on that opportunity to double dip a little bit when you don't sell something with only a few cents to go. So somebody who held at 95, they were trying to get 5 more cents. I foregoed that 5 cents and was able to buy back in again, low 80s in some cases, in the 70s in some cases for some of these primaries.
Well, I think these rules are really helpful for traders. You're known for another rule as well, which we might get into more detail in a having you on in a future episode. But it's double up on purchase and sell half along the way. But actually, you phrase that differently. Speak to that rule for a moment?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the always make friends rules, which is good too. But just ask Dave S. But but no, yeah, double up and sell half. That's the look. If you buy something low, you get something 11 cents, 12 cents, and you get a whole bunch of it, and it doubles in price. Or if you buy something at 12 and you can get 30 cents for it, is house money, and then you could sit pretty and say, what, no matter what happens with this, because if you bought something at 11 or 12 cents and then it kind of settles at 30, that means it could still kind of go either way. And if you sell half of it or a portion of it to feel good, like, hey, I picked something up, but if it doesn't go the way that I thought it was going to, it's no harm, no foul. That, that feels good and it gives you peace of mind. The gamblers, they like to buy a whole lot and then they'll hold and then they might buy more at 30. I could do that sometimes too, and feel good about that. But you really gotta see which way the wind is blowing, and see what conditions got it to double in the first place, but not flip. And if it's not there yet, then you might again start looking for an exit ramp, because if it's not moving in the direction to flip, that means it can go right back down to where you bought it from or become worthless. So it's like I said, it's a peace of mind thing, and it's when you find some money, you stick it in your pocket. Sometimes that's the rationale behind that.
Well, what we're really trying to do with this podcast is to teach newer traders to the platform. Of course, the older traders are thrilled to hear from experienced voices like yourself. They're always curious as to what you like and to hear you speak more about your trading tactics. But there's a lot of new traders out there, and these rules come in handy. And Mike and I fall under the category of being new traders. And just a moment ago, I applied one of your rules. So, and that wasn't just for the sake of the podcast. You mentioned that Cuomo showed up in the vice president market. I wasn't aware of that. I figured he'd be good for an uptick if he did show up in that market. I just acquired it at 2 cents. I doubled up on the order and I put in a sale immediately a penny higher at 3 cents to sell half of that position. Is that a proper application of your rule? Because I know it's a crazy trade in the first place. Is that how you would apply that rule?
I mean, that gets into the kind of some of the penny flipping when you go from 2 to 3, but it's a combination of the same things anyway, right? It's you lock in some gains and you keep it safe, right? You made some money, and if it turns into six, or if it goes all the way, you're not going to say, oh my gosh, I wish I wouldn't have sold that first half in the beginning. You're happy with
No,
the
I'll
you
still
know
say
the
that.
because the same thing about above 90, the likelihood of something flipping from that to going all the way to the dollar is pretty low. But when it's momentum unpredicted sometimes, and it's you got some money, and it's out of a market that you didn't really might expect to get as much as you thought, and you roll into the next one. There's new markets every day. There's new plays every day. So I try not to get hung up on, oh my gosh, if I would have held that amount of shares, I would have that much more, because that money might already been rolled into another profitable market, right? And it feels real good when something goes down to zero, that you said, you know what, I got out, with as much as I put in, no harm, no foul.
Well, thank you, Doug, for sharing the sell at 90 rule. It's something we've been hearing a lot about since day one, and it's great to have you share it with us. And we're going to be right back after a quick break and get to your 3 favorite trades on the predicted markets right now. But first,
Want a little more luck in your life? Get Luckbox, the control freak's guide to life, money, and probability. Named the best new magazine of 2019. Luckbox is a must-read for side hustlers, gamblers, entrepreneurs, and active investors. Each issue features best bets from prediction market experts, as well as timely sports wagering, stocks, options, futures, and cryptocurrency trading ideas. You can buy Luckbox on newsstands, but with this special offer, listeners of The Political Trade can receive a 10-issue digital subscription absolutely free. Just visit getluckbox.com to receive the award-winning magazine right in your inbox. Don't rely on luck. Get Luckbox for free today. Learn more at getluckbox.com.
and we're back with Doug, known to predicted traders as iSavage. And in each episode, we ask our expert trader for actionable advice on specific markets. So let's get started, Doug. What do you have for us as the first trade?
So the first market I like right now, and it's really just because I'm ready to gear up for the general election in November. I really like the price on Democrat yes or Republican no in Wisconsin right now. I think that it's trading at 59 for either side right now, and there's 2 reasons I like it. I was buying it at this price. Last couple of weeks, and it stayed pretty steady. I really think that I honestly look back at what happened in Wisconsin and Michigan as a fluke in 2016, and I think that they're going to be a lot easier to win over. I'm not in the majority on that, so I like the price at 59. But the reason that I like Wisconsin specifically right now is because both Wisconsin and Michigan were both in the high 50s and low 60s during this time period, and Michigan has gapped up to 66 right now for Democrat yes, 64 for Democrat no. So I feel like there's going to be some common trending in Wisconsin along with that, because I think those 2 states are going to track pretty closely together throughout this process.
So to step back, in the which party will win Wisconsin in 2020 market, Democrats are trading at 59 cents right now, and Republicans around 41 cents. And you believe that there's a high correlation between where Michigan is right now and where Wisconsin should be. So there's upside for the Democratic ticket at the current 59-cent price. And to give that some context, of course, back in 2016, Trump won the state and the 10 electoral votes that went along with it. He won the popular vote by about 22,000 in Wisconsin with his 1.4 million plus votes. The percentage was 47.22 for Trump to 46.45. So that was a close vote, 22,000 separating the two, but it was a red state. It was a red win in 2016, and you think that's going to reverse?
Yeah, I mean, I almost say this to anybody who will listen, and it alludes to kind of what I was saying earlier about why I like Kamala Harris being on the ticket. I think that if you were to go around Wisconsin right now, I think if you were to go around, Michigan right now, but I guess Wisconsin specifically, out of the 200,000 people who didn't vote in 2012, who voted in 2012 and didn't vote in 2016, I'm guessing that you could find more than 25,000 out of that 200,000 that would say, you know what, I wish I would have voted. I didn't think that it was going to go this way. It was one of the worst mistakes of my life. And I think that there's going to be a big potential uptick in voters in Wisconsin, because I think a lot of people who didn't vote that year really regret it based on the outcome.
So, in the which party will win Wisconsin in the 2020 presidential election, you like the Democrats here at 59 cents,
Absolutely.
and you like it up until about what price? You would buy it up until where?
I would say up to it's if you could get it under 63, it's probably is good worth to load up under. I think that it'll probably, once some good polls come in, and because this is going to be one of the most heavily polled states going up to the November election. So once some polls settle in, I think that there's going to be some equilibrium where it probably settles between 75 and 80. You can kind of make the decision at that point if you want to hold. But I think that that's probably where the ceiling is probably going to be, probably starting maybe even as early as May, but definitely June.
Okay, so I understand you're looking outside of U.S. borders for your second market, your second trade. What do you have for us?
So I'll tell you two things about the market that I'm about to talk about here, of who will be the prime minister of Israel at the end of the day on June 30th. This will be interesting. I'll tell you what you should do, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing. If you're a student of recent history and you do understand how inexplicably Benjamin Netanyahu has been able to survive politically despite a lot of headwinds against him, you should probably buy yes on Benjamin Netanyahu to be prime minister of Israel on that date, just because they've had 3 elections there in the past year and a half. For him to stay in power, all he has to do is exert some stubbornness or make a good deal, which he's been able to do up to this point. What I'm doing, despite my best advice, is buying no on Benjamin Netanyahu at 23 cents, because with with the ability to thread the needle and put some things in place, the opposition from Benny Gantz, he's got some things lined up to where he can block Benjamin Netanyahu from being able to be awarded the premiership based on, I could do a whole podcast of what's going on in Israel right now in terms of their kind of constitutional crisis. And I'm betting on Netanyahu no, just because it would be a really fun win and I like it at the price. But common sense says I'm probably making the wrong bet. So make with that what you will.
So it is a hot market. It's definitely in motion right now. And it is playing out in real time. The blue and white leader, Benny Gantz, is basically considering joining, or he was offered an opportunity to form a coalition or to join what would be termed as an emergency government under Prime Minister Netanyahu for 6 months. They're using the coronavirus emergency as the predicate for this 6-month interim period, and that would take you past the June 30th date if he were to agree to subordinate under Netanyahu for that 6-month period. Last week when we had Anthony Scaramucci on, he was of that same mindset that you can never bet against Netanyahu, but you're right. The forces have really, the political winds have shifted materially in Israel over the last 2 or 3 years, and I do see the value here. What do you think about the current pricing?
I think that Netanyahu no is probably a little underpriced right now, just based on recent developments. They've really put up a fight to block the Speaker of the Knesset, which is their parliament, from holding a vote to replace himself, and the courts have said that he has to hold a vote to replace himself. That's one of the key linchpins, that if he gets replaced, then the blue and white party will be able to potentially pass a law that says a prime minister under indictment, so anybody under indictment cannot form a government or be prime minister. So if that happens and they get that piece of legislation passed, that disqualifies Netanyahu. And what Gantz can do at that point is say, we'll make a deal with the Likud, and we will, serve it in a unity or emergency government with them. But Netanyahu would not be able to be the prime minister. So there's a key thing that could happen that could really move this price from 24 cents to 40, maybe even 50, because it's going to get real wonky between now and the end of the week.
So there's two markets that Predicted has on this outcome. One of them is by the end of 6:30, and the other is by the end of the year. And of course, there's different pricing because there's different time value and optionality reflected in the pricing. So you are partial to the front contract, so that'd be the June 30th contract as opposed to the more distant 12/31 contract.
Yeah, based on the price, I think that whatever is going to happen from this current situation is going to be resolved by June 30th, and we'll know one way or the other. And then also, I think that because there's a certain window where you have to form a government under, and if there's not a government formed in that window, they would have to go to new elections, and Netanyahu would stay prime minister, but the elections would potentially happen. The fourth election would happen, within 3 or 4 months, and at that point, Netanyahu could be in a worse situation. So I don't like to look that far out. With that being said, there is a way to kind of hedge here. Is that if you wanted to buy Netanyahu no at this price for the 630 market, but if you wanted to buy him yes for around, I think maybe whatever, around 57 cents in the other market. And the logic behind that could potentially be is that if they do have a deal where Netanyahu gets to serve as prime minister first, then he will likely be in that position through the end of the year, because that's the format of the deals that are being discussed.
So in the capital markets, we call that a pairs trade, where you take two correlated markets and buy one and sell the other as a hedge. It's a great arbitrage strategy, great hedging strategy, and you turn the time value to your advantage. So here's our first pairs trade on the political trade that's been suggested. In the market, who will be the prime minister of Israel at the end of the day on June 30th? Your trade recommendation is a very attractive 24-cent priced no.
Correct.
All right. Well, let's move on to your third trade. I know it's pretty timely. It involves Anthony Fauci. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I was really happy when this market showed up yesterday. This is the kind of market that I beg for. I call it a kind of a breaking news market, which really just has to do with what's going on currently, and the which way the winds can go can really make a difference. I like yes on Fauci. The price right now is a little higher than what I said when I liked it before. It was kind of in the lower 70s, but I still think that it's probably a good hold at 77, 79. Fauci's probably the most trusted guy in the country right now. I think that it would do extreme political damage for Trump to either fire him or even allow him to resign. I think that he's got a lot of leverage to the point where he could say, if you do this, I'll resign. And it's a bold strategy to bet on some rationality from somebody who can be very temperamental, but I don't think that he would risk the damage that he would do to himself by allowing Fauci to not be in his position through May 1st.
Very delicately put on this nonpartisan podcast. That was very well said. And I agree with it. As soon as this market showed up, I was really attracted to it because Fauci is front and center. And certainly you can't, Trump could not afford the loss of this face and the confidence that he's building among the American public. In fact, he's seeing it in recent poll numbers where he's ticking up a little bit, and that's clearly because he has stepped aside and let Fauci take lead in these press conferences, who has the same calming effect that Governor Cuomo is having, but not without some consequence. When this market first showed up, I saw it for the first time at 80 cents. It looked like a layup to me for 20 cents. Of course, now I have to think of it in terms of a layup for 10 cents if I'm going to sell at 90 and follow your rule. But the second I bought in at 80, there was a little tussle. And the next thing you know, the two of them are kind of at it a little bit. Mike, I think you have a clip for us.
Dr. Tony Fauci is the lead scientist on the president's task force. And in a new interview, he admits that statements Trump makes aren't always true or in line with his advice. Fauci told the journal Science, "I can't jump in front of a microphone and push him down."
Well, that's an interesting breakthrough for someone in his position to get up and say, I just can't push the president over. But as a result of this just occurring in the last 24 hours, he traded down to 73, 74 cents. but you like this here, right? You like it at current pricing at about 78 cents?
I think that it still makes sense. I think that if you were to buy at 78 cents, you would be pretty safe. But he has kind of shown some what's the word I'm looking for here? Being a little bit sensitive to events. He didn't show up to the briefing yesterday. His price went down actually below 70. He showed up to the briefing today and he went above 70. So this is something that you could probably buy and hold and feel pretty comfortable with. But it's also something that looks like there's going to be some volatility play with it as well. So you could do either one. This is actually a pretty good market to do that with, because if you like playing volatility, you're still pretty safe from not having the bottom fall out from underneath you.
If you're looking for a hold, what would be your optimal entry point to try to buy in at?
Probably under 75, closer to 70. Being that, I mean, I was getting shares for 68, 69 cents yesterday. I actually got shares at 68 cents at 520 this evening. I got 193 shares at 68 cents. So there's a little bit more volatility than I would think was going to be here. So it really might be a little bit more of a, like I said, I think you're safe on a hold, but there's also volatility to get it closer to 70 if you don't like the price right now.
Okay, so Anthony Fauci is director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. It's been 35 years up until this point, and you think he can make it all the way to May 1st.
Let's hope for all of our sake.
Right. Well said. Well, thanks for those 3 trades, Doug. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't already signed up on Predictit, you are in luck. You can take advantage of the tactics in the trades shared by our super trader guests. And simply go to predictit.org/TPT20. That's predictit.org/TPT20. Sign up, deposit $20, and we'll match the first $20 you deposited. That's it. Just simply go to predictit.org/TPT20, deposit 20, and you'll have 40 to trade with. It's that simple. Don't just listen to the political trades, sign up and trade along. Well, we're going to be right back with our luck box of the week and our guest, Doug from Chicago. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back for the final segment of the political trade. Each week, as you know, we name the luck box of the week, which is an undeserving recipient of a favorable outlier outcome. That's what Luckbox magazine reports on in every issue of our award-winning magazine, and that's what we share with you at the end of every episode. An idea of somebody who has just been undeservingly lucky. And this week, it's going to be Richard Burr. Richard Burr, who now has a predicted market named after him, which is perhaps not what the Republican senator from North Carolina was looking for. But his story goes like this. Just days before the coronavirus pandemic fully reached the United States, Richard Burr, senior senator from North Carolina, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, publicly painted a very rosy picture about the potential impact of the virus. He wrote op-eds, he released statements about how well prepared the U.S. was. In fact, he even called us lucky for having an infrastructure that was ready to take on a virus like this. But at the same time, he was telling his inner circle and well-connected constituents that the United States was going to get whacked. He basically raised a red flag among his donors and some close friends, and that has been verified in recent reports. Not cool, but that was only mistake number one. According to reports from campaign finance watchdog Open Secrets, Burr and his wife began selling stocks aggressively on February 13. Lots of stocks. The Burrs sold between 580,000 and 1.5 million in publicly traded securities, and they didn't buy any new ones. And these were not just any stocks. They sold shares in hospitality companies that would be especially vulnerable to a pandemic. So in short, Burr made about 33 transactions in a single day on February 13th, selling off his stocks to the tune of anywhere between 782,000 and 1.96 million, which represent the overwhelming majority of his personal net worth, saving a small fortune as just a week after his sales, the stock market began its steep decline. So that was mistake number two. Burr's trades may have violated the Stock Act of 2012. That the Stock Act is named as an acronym after the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act. Perhaps the first time that Congress has ever put a good acronym together for the naming of an act. But guilty or not guilty of insider trading and violations of the Stock Act, Burr is lucky in either scenario. If he's guilty, he is lucky that he is not up for re-election this fall, not until 2022, and that a pandemic is occupying the headlines for what would otherwise be a front-page story. If he's not guilty, well, selling off a stock portfolio representing the bulk of his net worth just days before a market crash is really about as Luckbox as you can get. So, Richard Burr, you are the Political Trades Luckbox of the week. Doug, have you been following this market? Will Burr still be a senator on May 1st? The yes is 85, and 53,000 shares have traded already.
Yeah, I think that based on all what you said, and I mean, Burr has a really good chance of hanging on. Nobody's going to turn the heat up on a Republican senator when there's, kind of a tenuous vote count in the Senate right now, with some people not even being able to be present. They're not going to push for him to resign. There's a Democratic governor of North Carolina who would replace him. I think there's a rule that says they would have to replace him with somebody of the same party, but I still don't think that they want to get whatever version his version of a Republican would be. So with nobody turning up the heat on him, and Chris Collins was basically caught on video insider trading, and he held on for a pretty long time and stayed in office. So I think Burr's pretty safe as well.
Yeah, so would you take that price? Would you? Is that a market that you would make a trade in?
Despite everything I just said, I think that there probably isn't enough meat on the bones there for me to jump in at 85, especially, from my perspective, there's only 5 cents left to go. So God bless everybody who is jumping in there, but I don't feel like setting alerts for Richard Burr for the next 2 months and being nervous about my position there. I got other places I can make some money.
Understood. Well, Doug, it has been great having you on. We've been looking forward to this ever since your name was popping up from day one among the active super traders out there in the predicted boards. And we definitely hope to have you back if we can count on that.
No, I would love to. Much respect to everybody who has been on the show before me. Jason, Derek, and Scott have done a great job setting up what this is supposed to be about, and I appreciate you guys for having this format. It's a lot of fun and really informative for everybody who listens, in my opinion.
Well, that's great. We appreciate that, and thanks again for being on the show. And I just want to remind listeners that we're going to have another kind of special guest next week on the next episode up, and we're going to have the team from Hard Factor, which is a Barstool Sports podcast that dabbles in the prediction markets as well. In fact, the whole team over there, those 4 kind of crazy guys on Hard Factor, which is a podcast that I listen to on a regular basis, they're active predicted traders, and you're going to enjoy talking to them or listening to them because they're also a real hoot. So something to look forward to on the next show. And we'll also be doing a story on them in the next issue of Luckbox magazine. Simple to subscribe to. Just go to getluckbox.com. Digital editions are free, and we're covering the prediction markets in every single issue. So, Doug, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks to you guys, too. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. And thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and you can be the first to catch any trends, tactics, or trades shared by our guests. This is Jeff Joseph.
And I'm Mike Reddy.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay healthy, and join us next week on The Political Trade.